Welcome to Her Life Unscripted podcast, inspiring burnt out, stressed out, and stretched thin women to embrace the unscriptedness of life. Hosted by Anna Osborne.
Hello, lovelies, and welcome to Her Life Unscripted, episode 33. I'm excited to be here with all of you today. It is a cold December morning, and I'm getting this episode ready to be able to share with you guys because I've got just this really exciting thing going on in the month of December. What we are going to be doing for the whole month of December is highlighting a local nonprofit charity that I so passionately believe in, and I'm going to share more about that. We've got an amazing interview with the executive director of that agency coming up. But the whole month of December, we are highlighting that agency and then incorporating into it ideas of being of service and what that means to give and to achieve greatness through being of service to others, and just kind of what that looks like in our lives and our relationships and our local community, and then on a greater scale. So that's really what the month of December is about. And I'm just really excited about this idea, and also to be able to share it with all of you and kind of hear your guys' feedback and input with it. So that is what we're working on for the month of December. So to start with, I want to share with you that I have been, when I started out in this work back in 2004 doing therapy, I started my work as a trainee, which is what we're called, us as therapists are called when we are working in grad school with clients, working to graduate with our master's degree. We're called a trainee. And so I started in 2004 as a trainee, and I was 2 years into my grad program, which ended up being a 4-year grad program. Lord, I should have gotten a PhD, but I didn't. I got my master's. And so I was in my grad program. And once you finish your second year, you start seeing clients because you've been doing so much, clinical work in the classroom. And now it's time to start practicing, right? So I got a traineeship with a local agency, and I was very, very fortunate to be able to be hired on, I guess, or given a volunteer position as a trainee at Weave, which in the Sacramento community is very well known for its work with domestic violence, sexual assault, and sex trafficking victims and survivors. And so it was a very big opportunity. It's a very well-known agency that does just tremendous work. And it was also an agency that was very close to my heart because my life has been impacted by domestic violence. And it was something that I felt was very, very important work, and also healing in a lot of ways, to be able to do work that was so intense, but also one that was so rewarding. And so what I decided to do, like I said, for this month is to be able to really highlight the work that the men and women do at Weave and kind of share a little bit about the agency with you guys, and then also include some ways for us to get involved if we are so inclined. So like I said, in 2004, I began working at Weave, and I was working there as a volunteer for about a year. And then they actually hired me on as an employee, where I remained there for about 3 years. And then I left to pursue another job. And I actually ended up coming back to Weave as their clinical supervisor once I got licensed. And I stayed with them for a few years as a clinical supervisor. And I just resigned from that position last December. So it's something that I have always stayed affiliated with, even when I haven't directly been getting a paycheck from them. It's been ways that I've always tried to stay involved with their mission and really the work that they do. It's something that sadly there is a tremendous need for, but luckily we are lucky in the Sacramento area to have just an outstanding organization such as themselves doing really, really hard, but just really, really rewarding work. So what I'm going to do today, in kind of our first of this 4-part series of really being able to highlight them and also these ideas of being of service, is what I want to do first is to introduce you to Beth Hassett. So she is going to be talking to us a little bit about Weave so that you guys can get an idea of the work that they do. And just to start with, Beth Hassett has been in the domestic violence, sexual assault advocacy work for over 24 years now. She is a passionate advocate and ally for women, children, and those among us who are vulnerable, marginalized, or oppressed. She leads the charge to build a community that does not tolerate domestic violence and sexual assault and offers victims the support they need to be safe and thrive. And I just have to say, knowing Beth as I have for all these years, she's just an amazing individual. She has so many honors and awards for the outstanding work that she does. And she just is passionate about what she does. She's got a huge heart for this work. And I know that she shares about that in the interview. So you guys will be able to hear it. And I love just her candidness about how difficult this work is, but also that there is a tremendous need for it. I know that in the recent years, it seems like we're talking about domestic violence and sexual assault much differently than we did when I started out in this field 12 years ago. And that's something I'm very grateful of, right? The conversations are evolving. And Beth and I touch on that in the interview. And I think it's just a powerful thing to be thinking about, just all the tremendous ways that we're now talking about something that's very difficult and very uncomfortable, and yet it's something that is very, very necessary. So to share with you a little bit about Weave, it was established in 1978. It provides crisis intervention and prevention services to women, men, and children in the Sacramento County who are victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. Their key programs include safe housing for women and children, a sexual assault response team, 24-hour support and information line, counseling, legal services, and also a Silence Doesn't Work Here program that is based on protecting people in the workplace that have violence in their homes, and also prevention education for youth and adults. So any information you would like to get about Weave, please go to their website, weaveinc.org. That's weaveinc.org. I'll include that in the show notes. But I wanted to be able to share a little bit about the agency so that you'll kind of be able to pick up where we left off, because Beth and I just dive right in talking. We're so excited to be able to talk to each other. So that really is the nature of today's interview. It's one that I think is a sensitive topic to talk about. And it's also one that is extremely difficult, especially when our lives have been impacted by domestic violence. But I think that it's something that we have to talk about, right? We don't want to talk about it, because the more we talk about it, the more we realize that it actually exists and there is a need for us to talk about it. But it's important for us to have words behind it, because if we're not talking about it, then we're not working to make a difference around it. And that's why I so believe in this work, because I do think it's important to get involved and have these really difficult conversations with men and women and children too, right? About what it means to have love never hurt, and to show respect and consent and boundaries and how we treat each other. I think they're really hard conversations, but it's also something that's really, really necessary. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the just amazing, dynamic, and passionate Beth Hassett. And I'm just really excited for you guys to hear about the program, and also, her work and the work that she oversees over at Weave. And then also we'll wrap up with some more interesting details. So I encourage you guys to dive in. Also, if this episode is triggering for you, I want you to be very mindful of that. When your life has been impacted by domestic violence or sexual assault, it's something that changes you forever. And if you are finding this to be particularly intense or particularly triggering, I encourage you to reach out to me, reach out to Beth. You're able to reach out to both of us, or if in your local community, reach out to your local domestic violence sexual assault agency and see what resources they have available to them to provide with support, crisis line, those sorts of things. So I just want you to be very mindful as we talk about this, that it is a topic that is sensitive and can be very triggering, but it's also one that I feel like it's important to be able to discuss, because it is so necessary. And we want to, and I want to be part of a generation that really works to change the ways that domestic violence and sexual assault impact our lives, and hopefully at a far, far less rate than it's currently doing so. So here you guys are, Beth Hassett. Awesome. Well, I am so excited to have Beth Hassett on her Life Unscripted today. We are doing an amazing series with the show for the month of December, and Beth has been so gracious with her time to be willing to come on the show and talk a little bit. And I'm just really excited to have you here, and I'm just really honored and privileged to have a little bit of your time and this time together today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Beth, I gave kind of your formal introduction about the amazing work that you do and kind of who you are prior to recording. But do you want to share a little bit about kind of, the work that you do in your own words and how that connects with the agency that we're really spotlighting this month of December?
I started at Weave 21 years ago and left and came back because I was so passionate about Weave's mission. And I needed a break for a little while. I work with and around a lot of people who have crisis and trauma in their lives, and we're working to stabilize them and help them move forward on their own path to safety and to becoming the best them that they can be for themselves and their families. So specifically, we're working with victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and more recently, we've added victims of sex trafficking. So people who are very marginalized, people who often haven't had the privilege that a lot of us have had in our lives and really need that extra safety net around them that Weave provides. And I'm very honored to be able to lead a group of people who really it's their life goal to make the world a better place, one person at a time.
Yeah. And I've had the privilege of working with those people. And, I found my way to Weave back in 2004, and it has been and will always be a huge part of kind of who I am as a person, and knowing that the people that you work with are so inspiring, and it really is their life's work. It's an amazing thing to be a part of.
Well, and I feel like now more than ever, we're talking on a national level about who's privileged and who isn't, and what help do some people need that other people don't have, and what's fair and equitable. So it's kept my work alive and growing as we're having different conversations than we were 21 years ago about domestic violence, about who ends up being sex trafficked, about who's more vulnerable for sexual assault and that sort of thing. So it's been an interesting growth, I think, in the work that I've done to look at it from all these new and different angles and look at, where can I have greatest impact? Where can Weave have greatest impact? And who should we be making sure feels comfortable and welcome when and if they need help?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. When I started out in this work 12 years ago, it was such a different conversation, and it's transformed so radically even in the last year. What have you seen become so different in your 21 years? What has been the biggest change kind of in this last year of the conversation around, like you said, privilege and domestic violence and marginalized victims and those sorts of things?
I think one big change is I think we spent our time as a movement and a field telling people why a woman stayed and why the men were being abusive, and trying to convince everybody that it was wrong.
And that it existed.
Yeah, and that it existed.
Right.
And I think everybody gets it now. I think people get it. They get that domestic violence happens and can happen to anyone. They get that anybody could be a victim of sexual assault. And now they want to do something. And I feel like the conversation has shifted to, what can I do as a person if I see this? What if my coworker is obviously in an abusive relationship? How can I help this person that I work side by side with 8 hours a day? If I'm a man and I see other men behaving badly, I get that it's no longer okay to just keep my mouth shut and assume it's somebody else's business. But what can I do? So I feel like we're in this kind of activation mode that we've never been in before, which is really exciting. And frankly, it's changed the dialogue out in the community and the conversations that I have, because people are getting that it's not a women's issue anymore, and they're getting that we need to engage men in the conversation. So I'd say that's the first thing that I've seen as really a big change. The other is just in talking about relationships themselves. When I started in the 90s, it was not okay to ever talk about co-combative relationships, volatile relationships where, this couple just doesn't get along and probably needs some marriage counseling. We didn't talk about that continuum of violence and how that might play out in people's relationships. And I think we really turned off a lot of people who could have used our help, because they weren't seeing themselves in that very traditional cycle of violence that we were talking about, which is a very real and useful tool. But they weren't seeing themselves in that as a victim. They maybe didn't want to call themselves a victim, so they weren't reaching out for help. They weren't getting help, and they were repeating these really negative relationships because they were never getting the support they needed to change themselves and to possibly choose a different partner.
Yeah, those are tremendous, tremendous differences. And I think, that is the vein of kind of the series that I'm doing in December, is how can I help? And having a service-based job, a job that is so dedicated to, serving others. And yet the question is, people aren't necessarily reaching out for that help in the same way as a coworker would see it, or as, a next door neighbor would see it. And so what can people do when they see this happening around them and they don't know what to do to be that kind of, I'm seeing it on the front line, but I don't have the knowledge to be able to offer support? Like, what do I do in those situations?
We have a program called Silence Doesn't Work Here, which is specifically for businesses. But I think what we train them and teach them to do applies to anybody. And it's to recognize that something's going on and to understand the dynamics of domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking is usually what we train in the workplace. But we also are doing trainings around sex trafficking. What does it look like if I see it? So recognize it and then respond, and respond empathetically. And I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but I feel like the world's getting less and less empathetic. It's so easy to just stay in your own bubble and to not think deeply about what somebody else might be experiencing. So, it's okay to say, well, I'm really sad for you. I'm sad this is going on. This doesn't seem right to me. Just respond in a way that is human and connects with somebody who might be feeling very isolated and ashamed of what's going on for them. And then refer them to get help. Yeah. Do not try to help them yourself. Don't take them home with you. Make sure they know what resources might be available to them. So, it's a pretty basic strategy, but I think where people don't engage is in that responding piece. They might recognize it and they might go, ooh, that just seems wrong. But they skip that stage of responding empathetically and connecting with that person and trying to help them. And just, simple things. And I think most people just don't know what to do. They don't know what to say, and they don't want to say the wrong thing. And, you can't train people to say the right thing, but we can give folks ideas of, just saying, this sounds abusive to me and that's not okay, or you don't deserve this, or I'm here to listen and not judge you.
Yeah, because you never know when planting that seed will start it to grow, of just saying, that's, you don't deserve that and that's not okay, may really grow and evolve into somebody really realizing that is the truth, that it's not okay.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you said, like, yes, those seem like simple steps, but it usually is where people get paralyzed, usually because they don't know what to do. It's not that they don't want to help, it's they don't know what to do with it. And so then they back up even further. And so having really simple steps like recognize it, respond, and then refer is, okay, that is something that is very user-friendly.
Right.
Yeah.
We hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. And so tell me about, being in this field for 21 years and just having such a huge team that you are working to inspire. What keeps you inspired in this field? Because it is one that, like you said, there's so much crisis and so much trauma that those people on the front line are seeing it in a whole different way than a lot of the rest of us. How do you stay inspired?
I think one of the most inspiring things, especially in the last couple of years, has been we have gotten some new grants and some new funding and the ability to do things differently. And for a while there, we had this menu of services. And if you fit into our menu, great. If not, we don't have the resources to help you. And we've really shifted to a more mobile advocacy solution, which involves a whole lot of advocates who are going to where the victims are. So we're going to the hospital when somebody shows up at the emergency room with a broken arm and says, my husband did this to me. And there's that opportunity, that kind of teachable moment where if somebody comes and just gives them the information and talks to them, they might actually make a different choice going forward than staying in a very volatile and dangerous situation. We're being dispatched to go help these sex trafficking victims. We're going to court with people and supporting them through their appointments. All of those things that can really be barriers to ever getting help, because not everybody has the wherewithal to walk through the doors of Weave. It's too scary for some people. Logistically, it may be impossible for somebody to get here. So I think being out in the neighborhoods with the people that we need to be helping is a huge change. And it's been really fun to identify those needs and to build this different type of a model. So that keeps me inspired. Engaging men and boys in ending violence has been very inspiring to me. It's been amazing to be able to say, you want to do something? Hey, we've got an event every spring called Walk a Mile. You can put a pair of heels on, you can raise some money for Weave, and you can put your money where your mouth is and actually show the women in your life that you're willing to do something. And the stories coming from those men about, I always wanted to do something, but I didn't know what to do, or I was raised in an abusive home and I'm paying it back for my mother or my sisters, have really been touching and amazing and inspiring to me, to be inviting those new voices into the solution rather than all of us women sitting around going, what are we going to do about those men? And so that's the kind of thing that inspires me. And I think the third thing is we've had some real successes in changing some laws and changing policy and making life safer and easier for victims. And I really enjoy participating in the legislative process and actually helping educate legislators about what's better for victims and some laws that they might pass that could make things safer and easier and better, et cetera.
What a legacy you guys are creating for so many families and children and partners, being able to really shift, create a whole new branch of the family tree that is so healthy, that's breaking that cycle of what they might have been raised with or what they might have been exposed to earlier in their lives.
Well, and it feels good to have people call or come to us and say, we've saved my life back in the day. Just this week, I got a call from a former client who 17 years ago went through our program, and her daughter got counseling because we had a in-school counseling program at the time. And she called because she saw that her son was being abusive to his girlfriend, and she remembered reading some book when she was in group 17 years ago, and she wanted to get a copy of the book and give it to the girlfriend and make sure that this next generation was safe. And I thought, what a great legacy that she remembered me. She called our support line, figured out how to get through to me, and she's going to pay it back now to somebody else. And hopefully that person won't end up in the same kind of violent relationship that she did.
Yeah. Well, and that also that you guys as an agency, you're still there because you guys are 30, how many years now?
38 years.
Okay. So 38 years of being just an absolute safe haven in our community. And I know that, when I worked for the agency and I would kind of, travel around and share about my work, people would think we'd be in conversations and people would say, well, but isn't there a Weave in LA? That Weave was so well known in the Sacramento community.
People think we're national.
Right. Absolutely. And so for 38 years, you guys have been a safe haven here in the Sacramento community, and that people are, like you said, 17 years later, this client calls and that you guys are still doing this work, which, part of us can go, we're still having to do this work, but right? Like there's those days, right? But then there's the other part of it of saying we're still doing this work and people are changing their lives and changing the ripple effect of their families because of it. Like that in itself is powerful.
Well, the domestic violence we've talked a lot about, but the sexual assault piece of it too has really shifted. And all of the talk now about campus sexual assault has really shifted some of the work that we do. We now have advocates embedded on campuses around Sacramento. We've got one that goes to each of the community college campuses every week and is that safe person for rape victims to report to if they don't want to talk to somebody on campus. That's really shifted how everybody looks at sexual assault. We now have parents going, oh my gosh, what do I do with my 16-year-old or my 17-year-old to prepare them for going off to school, to college, where we now know statistically the odds of being sexually assaulted are higher than at any other time in their lives. And so again, it's feeling more collaborative. It's more bringing the community in to help find solutions and to keep themselves safe rather than those ladies at Weave trying to save everybody.
Yeah.
And that's been really inspiring to me. And it's a more fun way to work, frankly, to work with our community to bring an end to these things rather than to try to badger them into supporting us in some way to go off and do all the work ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think also even being able to use the language, right? I think that there's we're talking about it more and in a tremendously different way. And I know, years ago, sitting around with friends at a restaurant, after a long day at work, and we're using the word domestic violence and the word rape, and we're thinking, oh my gosh, the poor people sitting next to us are probably thinking, like, what are these women doing? Like ruining our dinner, sitting around talking about these really, really intense things. And not that, every dinner conversation needs to include that, but that we're having conversations and we're using the right words so that it is being able to have those really hard, those really uncomfortable conversations, but we're calling it what it is, which is abuse, which is violence versus, well, that just wasn't so nice. We're using the words that really apply to the gravity of this situation.
I agree. And, we've had to develop a whole new vocabulary around sex trafficking. We don't use the word prostitute. A 14-year-old is not a prostitute. She is a victim of sexual assault and human trafficking and all sorts of other things. So now it's a whole new group of people we have to educate about what are the right words. How do you look at that person who's walking down the street at 2 a.m, who obviously isn't on her way to school? And what do we do about her? What do we collectively do to keep her safe? So it's just another layer of the same work we've been doing, but with a wholly more vulnerable group of victims that really have gone unnoticed all these years. And we're finally paying attention to these girls.
Yeah. Oh, thank God for it. Absolutely. So, okay. So thinking about, people being able to help, the recognize, respond, and refer. Those are amazing, very simple steps, yet hugely, hugely meaningful steps. What about if people want to get involved with their money, right? If they feel called to action, and this is me putting this on Beth, of how do people do that, right? If they are so inspired and want to be able to help support the work that you do, how do they get involved being able to financially offer assistance?
In a number of ways. People, of course, can just write us a check. We appreciate that. And then we have events throughout the year. Walk a Mile is a great example. We raised $350,000 from that event last year. And that was mostly men going out and having their friends and family support them and help them raise money. We do it in a fun way. They each have their own little web page so that they can watch the amount of money that they raise grow. And that's great. We also, at the holidays, have a toy shop. So we need toys donated, and anyone who's been a client over the last year can come shop. And we have more and more clients, so we need more and more things. This year, we actually put a wish list on Amazon, so people can just go on Amazon and have it shipped here, which is a great idea. And we have 2 retail stores that provide clothing to clients who are going back to work, who are just staying in our safe house and have left without any clothing. And so they can come shop, take their voucher. If they're going to court and they need an outfit, whatever they need. And those stores raise money for Weave. So we always need people's clothing, and we need shoppers in our stores. So, and then throughout the year, we need food, sweats to give to victims who have been sexually assaulted and their clothing has been taken as evidence. There's so many ways that people can either go out and buy something and donate it, or just, write a check and give a tax-deductible donation.
Fantastic. Well, I'll include the website for obviously weaveinc.org for folks to be able to go on there and learn about being able to donate. And then also I'll get the Amazon link for the toy shop if that's from you. Yep. So that if you want to send that over, so I can include that too. So folks are able to look at that. But yes, like you said, so many ways to donate and get involved, and being able to know that what you're doing has a direct impact, not only, just on the front lines, but again, that ripple effect of being able to teach your kids about, why we're doing this and why we're donating, and how it really impacts other families. Absolutely.
Well, and it's never too early to start talking to kids. Some people wait until these kids are 17 years old and then say, oh my gosh, I should have been having these conversations long ago. And even a 10-year-old understands what an unhealthy relationship is. I mean, they get it. Yep. And they're starting to think about dating and what that's going to look like at 10. So it's never too early to start talking about being safe and being healthy and treating each other with respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Kids are sponges. They're soaking it all up around them. And even if they are coming from, they're privileged to be coming from a family that isn't impacted directly by violence. It's still in their worlds, and they still see it. Yeah, tremendously. So before we end, because I want to be so mindful of your time, is there any words of encouragement or words that you would like to offer those folks that may be hearing kind of about the work that you do and thinking maybe the relationship I am in isn't so healthy, or maybe I have had a sexual assault in my life and I'm realizing how much it's impacting me? Any words of encouragement that you can offer to those listening if they're starting to just put together the pieces for the first time?
We know based on what people type to get to our website that lots of people are exploring what's going on and aren't so sure that what they're going through counts as domestic violence, or if what they experienced long ago was really sexual assault. And I always encourage people, get educated. Go on our website, go on other websites, learn about what the cycle of domestic violence looks like, learn about what healthy relationships versus unhealthy relationships look like. And just know that if you think you were sexually assaulted, you probably were, and that it's never too late to get help. I think people don't realize that a lot of folks come into Weave for counseling years and years later after they've left a relationship or have been sexually assaulted, and they find that it's affecting their lives and they need to move beyond that with help. If you come to Weave, we're not going to make you leave your partner. I think that's one big myth out there. Nobody's going to tell you you have to go. Our goal is to better equip you to be in whatever relationship you're in and to remain safe. So that's our goal, is just so that you're aware of potential danger and potential outcomes of being in a violent relationship, if that's what it is, and that you understand how to seek safety if you need it down the road.
So well said. Well, Beth, thank you so much for your time. I'm really, really just humbled that you said yes and you were willing to come on the show. And I'm just excited to know about the amazing work that you guys all continue to do. I'm just constantly thinking about all of you and praying for the work that you do and just putting lots of energy of inspiration out to those front lines that you guys are all on.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Wow, what a great conversation with Beth. I'm so grateful. I have to say that when I reached out to her to see if she'd be willing to come on the podcast, I was kind of nervous. Beth is somebody that I've looked up to for a number of years and also had the pleasure of working side by side with. And as the executive director of a large agency, I know that her time is very, very limited. And yet she was so gracious and said yes right away to be able to, come on the episode and share about her work and the work that she supports over there at Weave, and also to be able to, really let me share about her agency and the agency that she obviously works for, because I feel like it's something that we all benefit from, of having these really difficult and maybe uncomfortable conversations, but we need to have them because it's part of what's going on in our world. When we don't talk about these things, when we don't talk about domestic violence, and we don't talk about sexual assault, that it happens, right? It's when we talk about it that we can move towards a place of prevention, and prevention by raising our sons and daughters differently. And so I'm just really, really grateful for Beth to give of her time, because I know she is one busy woman. And I loved the things that we talked about. I think that being able to have this really honest conversation about not only what domestic violence and sexual assault and, human trafficking looks like in our agency, but also how it profoundly impacts our lives. And also that we're having a whole different conversation around it, right? We're getting everybody involved. We're saying, hey, men, let's have a conversation about domestic violence and sexual assault, and you're part of the solution. That just really made me realize how much this work has changed, because before it really was kind of just women doing this work and we weren't inviting men over to be part of this great movement. And that's something that's really shifted in the last few years. So super, super powerful. And I love that she shared about what inspires her about her work. I've worked in that field for many, many years. It's not work that I do day to day like I did years ago, but it is obviously something that comes up in my practice quite often. And there's something different about being on the front lines of that work. It is just powerful, it's overwhelming, it's draining, and it's so rewarding. And I just loved hearing Beth talk about the things that inspire her after 24 years to continue to be having a profound impact in this field. So just amazing. I do want to share with you guys a little bit more information about the Holiday Toy Shop, because Beth touched on it in the interview. Now, the Holiday Toy Shop over at Weave is this amazing thing that basically what they do is they get so many donations of toys and gift cards and money to buy gifts. And what they do is they set up they decorate the whole kind of conference room area. It's giant. It's like their training room. They decorate it and they put the toys out just like you would a shop, right? And what they do is they have anybody that has come through Weave services in the last year that has children gets vouchers. They get, I don't know how many it is per kid, but I think it's a couple. I remember it being a couple. They get a couple of vouchers per kid. And what they get to do is they get to come in there and they get to shop for their kids with brand new, amazing toys and gifts and gift cards. And they get to buy things for their kids that they wouldn't otherwise be able to buy because of the current state of, what they're surviving, whether it's the domestic violence or sexual assault. And so Beth referenced it in the interview. And what I've also put in the show notes is a link to the Amazon wish list that they've created for you guys to be able to pop on if if you feel so inclined, and buy some gifts that would be shipped right to Weave's door and put right into the toy shop where these men and women that are survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human sex trafficking would be able to come in and buy gifts using these vouchers. So it's completely free to them, but they would get to pick out gifts for their family, for their kiddos. And that, as a mom, is something that it brings up a lot of emotion, thinking that, you get to provide to support another mom or another dad that's going through really tremendously difficult and traumatic times, to make their holiday a little bit lighter for their kids. So I will include that in the show notes, that Amazon wish list, or you're also welcome to go over to weaveinc.org also and find ways to donate. So I am so grateful that you guys have made your way through this interview. And I really, really encourage you, please reach out with your voice feedback. I know that talking about domestic violence and sexual assault is not an easy thing, especially during the holidays, but domestic violence doesn't discriminate, and it doesn't stop during times of year when we're supposed to be joyful and loving and kind to each other. So I just think it's something that we have to talk about. And also knowing that we get to use whatever gifts around us, right? Whatever abundance we have, whether that's through giving of our time or giving of our finances, that we're able to lighten somebody else's load by being able to do that. So just wanted to share all that with you guys. So please do send your feedback in via the SpeakPipe app, or you're welcome to email me to anna@herlifeunscripted.com. And please do head over to the website. I'd love for you guys to be able to sign up at herlifeunscripted.com for the interest list that we are growing right now for our 2017 live events. So thank you guys so much. I cannot wait to connect with you next week. And please share this interview. It is one that I want to reach as many ears as possible, because I know it's one with a great message, and also one that lots and lots of people will benefit from. Thank you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Want to learn about the latest retreats, workshops, and speaking events hosted by Anna? Head over to herlifeunscripted.com to get in on all the juicy details. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast so we can continue to grow our amazing audience. Lastly, be sure and send in your voice feedback via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna@herlifeunscripted.com. We can't wait to hear from you.